Oh, hey everybody, I didn't see you there. I was just chowing down. You know what? I'm gonna finish chewing and then I'm gonna talk. How are you, Jenna?
I'm doing great. I had a lovely breakfast and now I'm snacking on some blueberries.
I love to hear it. I am just snacking on something that we made last week. Now, Jenna is new to Little Lab at Home. First of all, can anybody remind us, if you were here last week, what did we all make together? Does anybody remember? What did we all make together last week if you joined us? Oh my goodness. Pickled carrots, or perhaps pickled other stuff. But yeah, I made some pickled carrots and I made a few other pickled things too. I just ate one of my carrots and it was very crunchy and very tangy. I thought it was really, really, really good. Today, together, we are going to continue turning our kitchens into test kitchens. And like we've been doing over the past couple of weeks, we are going to be fermenting, which is the controlled breakdown of foods chemically into something new. Now, we've fermented a few things before. Somebody just told us that we did some pickling last week, which is excellent. Was anybody with us the week before? Can anybody remind us what we made the week before that? What did we make in Little Lab 2 weeks ago? Hmm. Oh my goodness. We made sourdough starters. Fantastic. If you still got your sourdough starters, we'd love to hear about how your pickles or sourdough starters are still doing there in the chat. So let us know. My sourdough starter is still doing really well. And again, I've got some delicious pickled carrots to keep me company during Little Lab today. Today is our last day of no heat kitchen projects and our last day for a fun fermentation projects in our test kitchens. Are you excited, Jenna?
I am so excited. I'm so happy to be here at Little Lab.
I am also really, really excited that you are joining us. Now, we've talked a little bit about how, in order to ferment, to break down these foods and turn them into something new and interesting and different, what we're going to do is we are still going to make a little home for something that is alive to break down our food for us. The past couple of weeks, we've made little homes for yeast and bacteria, and today we're making another little home for another type of bacteria, and we're going to do it in a really special way. Now, first things first, everybody, let's take a deep breath together. Okay, that felt really good. Let's take another deep breath. Everybody ready? 3, 2, 1. Excellent. In that deep breath that you took and all around you are all sorts of teeny tiny little living things. And we can make little nice homes for those things so that they end up on our food and help to ferment our food. The little teeny tiny thing we are going to be making a little home for today is called lactic acid bacteria. Now, Jenna, when you think of the word bacteria, what do you immediately think of? And this is a question for
Hmm.
everybody else too. You can answer in the chat. What do you think of when you think of bacteria?
I think of I think of good bacteria and bad bacteria.
Yeah, often we think of bacteria as just being stuff that is not very good for you. And there is some bacteria out there that is not very good for you, that can make you feel sick. There are lots of other small living things, including bacteria, that not only don't make you sick, but also some that are really, really, really good for us. And one of the bacteria that we are going to be making our home for today is one of the types that is good for us. It's a type that we want to keep in our food as we ferment it, but we're also going to be making that home so that we can keep out all of those other bacteria that we don't want in our food. Sound cool?
Sounds great.
All right, I am going to switch over to my experiment cam.
Ooh, I think I'll do the same.
Experiment cam. Okay. Lactic acid bacteria is a really, really interesting food. And today, I am going to be doing this with blueberries. Now, we actually have two different recipes that we're going to be trying out together today. For these two recipes, one of the things that I need to do is I need to split my blueberries in half. I need to figure out a way so that I can get half in one bowl and half in another so that I can try 2 different recipes. Now, Jenna, take a look. Does it look like I have half in one bowl and half in another?
Not to me, no, it doesn't look like there's a lot more in one than there is in the other.
So let's do a little bit of intuitive math, which is an excellent early childhood skill. Does it look to all of you watching with us and participating at home, does it look like I have half in this bowl and half in this one? Does it look like it's about the same? This process of doing basic ratios, of figuring out how to get about half and half, is a really, really, really important early childhood skill. Now, if I were to go through and count through to make sure that I was getting exactly half in one and half in another, which you might want to do in a really important scientific experiment, or if we were being extremely careful and had a lot of time together, that would take a pretty long time, and we don't have a very long time. So Jenna, how do you think we can get about half in one bowl and half in another?
I think using a bunch at the same time instead of separating them one by one.
I think that sounds excellent. So let's try and put all of ours together, and you may be doing something similar at home. We're going to try and get half in one and half in another. So I'll put some in here, and I'll put some in here, and then I'll put some in here, and I'll put some in here. How am I doing so far? Does this look a little bit better than before? I know one of
Yeah,
them
it
is kind of in
does.
some sunlight. And I'll put some in here, some in here.
I'm separating mine on my table.
Oh, that's awesome too. This one looks okay. Take a look. I've got 2 bowls. How does this look to everybody?
It looks good to me.
I think it looks pretty good too. Again, it's probably not exactly perfect, but doing a little bit of intuitive math like this is important. So one of the things that we're going to need to do to start our process of creating this little home with our blueberries is we're going to wash them a little bit. So I've got a little bit of water here. I'm going to put some water into one of my bowls, into this big one here. You may also do this in a sink with a strainer, but I'm going to do it right here. And let's go ahead and I'll drop one in, and then I'll drop another one in. And you know what? Is this the most efficient way for me to wash my blueberries? Drop them in one at a time? What do
No,
y'all think?
I don't think so, Max.
You don't think so, Jenna? What do you think I
So,
should do?
I think you should put them all in there at once. Just
Oh
pour
my
it
goodness.
in there.
You know what? That is such a good idea. Okay, I've poured mine in, and now let's just go ahead and mix them up. So we're going to use our hands, and we're going to wash our blueberries. We want to get all of them nice and wet. You don't have to use the exact same amount of water that I did, because we're going to take our blueberries back out. But you want to get all of your blueberries pretty soaking wet. Now, basically what we are going to do, if you're doing this with blueberries, where there's lots of other vegetables and fruits that you can do these with too, is we're basically going to go through a process where that living thing is going to take one of our nice, plump blueberries like this, and it's going to squish it. And it's not going to squish it the same way that I am, but let's give that a try. Everybody pick up one of your blueberries and go ahead and squish it. That is
Whoa,
very satisfying, I think.
that is really fun.
Now we've changed the texture a little bit. That's interesting looking at the inside of the blueberry.
My blueberry has lots of seeds.
The seeds. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Now, even though we've changed the texture, does this mean we can't eat it anymore, even though they are squished?
No way. We can still
No,
eat that.
because you're doing the same thing in your mouth. You're squishing them up inside of your mouth, and that process is just invisible. So if it's inside your mouth or outside of your mouth, like we're doing right now, these are still edible. Let's do something else. Along with a little bit of texture play, let's do some sensory exploration. The process of squishing these up is pretty fun in itself, because it gives us an idea of what these blueberries kind of feel like. Let's go ahead and give these a nice big smell.
Mmm, that smells great.
And let's try smelling one of the ones that is not sort of exploded. Which one smells stronger to you? Which one smells stronger?
For me, the ones that are squished up smell stronger.
I think so too. These ones that are squished up smell stronger than the ones that still have all of their insides still inside of this skin. And that's kind of going to be an important hint for our project here, that we need to be smelling to use our senses to explore to make sure that we know when our project is done. I'm going to set aside my squished up blueberries and I'm going to move my nice soaking wet blueberries back into this bowl here. Okay, now there's actually only one more ingredient that I need for this recipe. So I'm only using the ones that are nice and soaking wet. The only other ingredient that I need is this stuff. What is this stuff? We've used it before in our projects. This is salt. And I have a few different ways that I can get the salt on there. I can use this teeny tiny little spoon. Does this seem like the best way to do it though?
Not to me, Max.
Let's try another way. Let's try one of these. And if you've been joining us before, you can level off your salt again, which is an excellent process skill for cooking and for science. So I've got a nice level spoon, and I'm going to put more and more salt on there. And for about this amount of blueberries, you probably want, and this is a good tip for parents, you probably want about half of a tablespoon. If you're not being as exact with your measurements, that is also okay. But you kind of want to eyeball it to make sure that every single one of your blueberries has got a pretty good coating of salt on it. Now, I've put a lot of salt in there already. Do you think that all of my blueberries have salt on them right now, or do you think we should do something else?
Doesn't look like all of your blueberries have salt on them, Max.
You know what? It looks like some of them have a lot of salt, and then some of them do not have very much. So let's do something else. Let's mix them together, because we need to make sure that all of our blueberries get a lot of salt on them. And while you do this, you might notice that that salt is going to kind of disappear. It's not going to look like it did just a second ago where there was an awful lot of salt all over them. But just because it disappears doesn't mean it's still there. It's just mixed in with that water. So we are mixing up our berries now, and we're careful to do it so that we're not squishing our berries.
Gabriella is saying that that would be very salty.
Would be very salty. So we want to make sure that every single one of our blueberries has salt on it. And if you think that might not be the case, there's a simple solution, and it's to add even more salt. It is better to have more salt in it than it is to have less. Because if your blueberries do not have enough salt on them, then we haven't done a good enough job of making a little home for those bacteria that we want to help ferment. Okay, mine feel pretty mixed up. It should kind of feel a little bit grainy on all of your blueberries. Now, I know some people are thinking blueberries and salt, that sounds very, very weird. And you're probably right. But remember, there is one more ingredient for this project, and it's the same ingredient that we've talked about for all of our fermentation projects. Does anybody remember what our last super important ingredient for fermenting things is? Mixing and see if anybody remembers. Our last important ingredient is time. It takes a little bit of time for these to do their job properly. This salt is going to help that bacteria ferment my blueberries, which is basically going to turn them kind of sour and a little bit tart. And it's going to kind of put them through a process of squishing them, kind of like these ones. Now, because they're going to get squished, they are going to become really aromatic, which means they're going to smell really, really, really nice. And that's actually really the way that we can tell when they're done. So here's the last piece of the process, is that I've got a Ziploc bag here. Do you have a Ziploc bag, Jenna?
I do. I have a snack bag.
Now, this Ziploc bag has a lot of air in it right now, and we can put even more air in it by blowing it up. Or you can take air out of it by flattening it out. Everybody try that process out. Which do you think would be better for our fermentation process? Having a lot of air or having very little air? Which one do we want to get? A lot of air or a little bit of air? For making a specific home for this type of animal, or this type of living thing rather, you want to have as little other stuff in there as possible, and that includes air. So you don't really want to have any air in there if you can manage that. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take our blueberries, our nice salty blueberries now. Don't need anything else, and we're going to put them into our bag. I've got all of my blueberries into my bag. And I might add just a pinch more salt. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to spread them out on the bottom of the bag. Trying to spread them out on the bottom of the bag. And then I'm going to try and press it down a little bit to try and get as much air out as I possibly can. Can I make it so that there's not very much air in there?
Evelyn is saying that your blueberries are shinier than they used to be.
That is a really excellent observation, Evelyn. Thanks for that. And then once I think I've got as much air out as I can, and you can keep testing them and keep pressing down on this bag, you're going to seal up the top. Now, something interesting is going to happen when we are fermenting these. You might remember when we talked about our sourdough starter, and maybe even when we were pickling, that the process of fermentation means that it's going to create bubbles. Now, those bubbles are going to appear here as a gas, and we right now have a system that is closed. We've zipped up our lid here, which means you might tomorrow or the next day come back and find that there's a little bit of air. It's kind of like a pillow. Do you want that air in there? Do we want that air inside of our bag?
I don't think so.
You're right, Jenna, we don't. So we have to do something that has a really, really funny name that's called burping our bag. We have to burp our bag. And to burp your bag means we're going to try to get rid of some of that air that's in there. So to burp it, you're going to gently open up a little bit and do what we just did. We're going to push as much air out as we possibly can. And then you're going to close it back up so that it kind of looks like it does right now. It's really, really, really important for this process of fermentation that when they start to explode inside of this bag and all their juices start coming out, which should start to happen pretty soon, that they sit in their juices, that they are fully in those juices. Now, there are a couple of ways that you can do that. You can put them inside of a jar and squish them in there if you're doing a whole lot. But for me, one of my favorite ways to do it is to just use a big heavy book and put it right there on top of it. So I will actually keep my big heavy book right on top of my blueberries here, which is going to squish my blueberries a little bit, but it's going to make sure that my blueberries stay inside of their juices that will continue to ferment them. After about 4 or 5 days, and remember, you're going to want to burp it before that, but after about 4 or 5 days, open your bag up and you can smell it. It should smell kind of like these squished up blueberries that we made before, but it should kind of be more tart and sour smelling. So it should kind of have a little bit of a sour smell to it too. As long as it's not hugely sour, and if it doesn't smell like it's spoiled, which is probably a judgment for the parents out there, right? As always, if something does not seem like something that you would want to be eating, the rule of thumb is don't eat it. But it should smell slightly sour and slightly tart, and that means that your blueberries are done and ready to go. If you're keeping these at about room temperature, it'll take about 4 or 5 days for them to get that nice tart, sour smell. If you're keeping them in the fridge, it'll take longer. The colder that you keep them, the longer this process will take. But as soon as you think that they are ready, as soon as they have that nice tart, sour smell, and they should be sort of sitting in their own juices in here, you can bottle them up, put them inside of a container, and put them in the fridge. And then I would try to eat them within 2 weeks or so. And that is how you make lacto-fermented blueberries. For our other type here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do something really simple, but inside of my bag, I'm going to put a brine, and that brine again is just going to be salt and water. So instead of just having salt all over my blueberries, I'm going to put it in there with a little bit of mixture of salt and water. And remember, we're going to put an awful lot of salt in there to make a really salty brine. And that'll be an interesting experiment for me to try to see if it's different between mine that has a brine in it, this mixture of salt and water, or to see how it compares to my blueberries that are just in there just with salt. So that is going to be my interesting experiment for y'all. And I would love to hear how that goes for you later on. All right, I'm going to switch back over to my face cam. Okay, so I have got my big heavy book on top of my blueberries. I'm making up my brine so that I can make my second batch here. But that is just about all the time that we have got today. So as I am mixing up my brine, I am also going to say goodbye to Jenna. Jenna, thanks for joining me today.
Absolutely. Anytime you want me to come and mix stuff up with you.
I love that. And I'm also going to say goodbye to all of y'all. Thank you for joining us today, too. Somebody had an excellent question. Do you want to put the brine in a bag or a jar? Either one is okay. You can put this into a bag as long as you're not putting a huge amount of it. But it works in a jar or in a bag. We're just doing them in bags because they are nice and available to us. My friends, thank you so much. As always, we will send out this, and you always have access to our old episodes of Little Lab at Home, and we hope that you'll watch those on our YouTube channel. I will be back in touch to see how your fermentation projects are going, and if you'd like to share with us how your projects have been, feel free to reach out anytime. Thank you so much, my friends, and have a good rest of your day.
Bye.